So, you've been assigned to teach public speaking. It's not essay writing, and it's not theater. We want to make the experience as beneficial for our students as possible. We want them to leave our classroom empowered, inspired, and confident in their skill sets. But who has the time to read research and go to workshops? That's where I come in. My name is Julian, and you're listening to the Public Speaking Educators Forum. This podcast is for educators who teach public speaking. Each week, you'll hear from a fellow instructor who has an interesting trick to the trade to share with you. We are speaking up so that you can help your students to speak up too. Tonight on the forum, we'll be speaking with Mr. Ray Viggiano. Ray is the manager of business development and specialty practices at a global staffing and recruiting company. In addition to this, Ray serves as an academic specialist for the public speaking lab at Kane University in New Jersey. Tonight we're going to be learning about this facility, how it was established, and how other institutions could follow suit in developing public speaking resources for their campuses. Ray, welcome to the forum.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. So I guess just to kind of start us off, if you could give us a little bit of background about Kane's Public Speaking Lab, how it came to be, and some of the services that they offer.
Sure, great. Well, I've actually been working with the Speaking Lab going on about 10 years now. And when I first began, it was really a much smaller outfit in a conference room just adjacent to the communication department. Dr. Chris Lynch at the time, who I believe was the chair of the department, asked me if I would be interested in serving, and I gladly accepted. So it was really very small, one-to-one, very communal with the staff and the students. I will say, however, over the past 2 or 3 years, it has really grown tremendously. It is now merged together with the Writing Center under the Global Commons Learning Center in the library, and it's really become very interactive. Outside of just going in for special tutoring on a one-on-one session, now there's forums, there's workshops, there's a lot of email outreaches. It's just become very interactive, and I feel like it's become a much more global part of the university.
That's wonderful to hear, and it's amazing that it was able to sort of develop in intensity so quickly. Of course, a lot of people, when we think about putting something like this together, the first question that comes out of an administrator's mouth is, how much is this going to cost? And I would imagine that such a facility is a costly venture to get going. So would you mind giving us a little bit of information as far as the expense behind running such a facility?
Sure. Well, I'll do the best I can, because the actual, finance components to the university is certainly above my pay grade. But I'm imagining there are costs associated with, having a learning center. I can tell you, to the best of my knowledge, I do believe that university fees, from student tuition, do cover, an allocated budget for a bevy of things, which I do believe that the learning center obviously falls under. So basically, in terms of cost, I'm assuming that they already have space. It's more so allotting space, as you probably know, having been on campus for many years. There's always sort of areas where there's vacant rooms, or they could partition out additional components to existing centers. So I don't necessarily know how much goes into the real estate component of it, but of course, you have to hire academic specialists, most all of which I believe are part-time. And then, of course, there are some grad assistants, which there is a cost to that. But to the best of my knowledge, I do believe that a lot of that cost kind of falls under more of a general cost structure, for the university to give back to students. So I, to the best of my knowledge, I think it's a very workable thing in an already existing infrastructure that probably has spend allocated in different areas.
It's very easy for learning centers, tutoring centers, whatever you'd like to call them, to sort of lump speech tutoring under the umbrella of writing tutoring. I've seen that a lot at the different schools I've taught at, where A writing tutor can also help with writing speech, and I've actually discovered that sometimes they end up not only being less help to the student, but giving them false advice in some cases, because as we both know, essay writing and speech writing are very different processes. So within your public speaking lab, what are some of the qualifications that you look for when you hire speech tutors?
Well, that's a good question. I have never hired any speech tutors, but I've worked closely with the managing director of the department, and I've done hiring in my professional career. I think that what they look for, obviously, is a person that generally is a student, whether they're a grad assistant or someone that has some affiliation with learning, going on to other things, whether that's going to be writing or public speaking in their own professional career. So sort of having that aptitude is certainly, a promising feature. Also, I think that they need somebody who is adaptable to people, understands how to listen, can be sort of communicative. A lot of times students come in, and as you probably know in your experience, you have to do a lot of investigation before you can get to the root cause of how they need help, right? So it's almost as if you're giving them mini interviews. So you have to be very open, very able to balance out, what the student needs and then what the professor is looking for and how to kind of tie that together. I would like to just go back early on to your first statement. I do think that there is some synergy between writing and speaking. And part of that is most of the time I find when we are giving speech coaching, it's not about standing and deliver, which is really the end result, right? Everyone sort of thinks we get up and we talk to people about how to do their hand movements and communicate to an audience. Sometimes we have to start back at the foundation and help them put together what I like to call a deck, right? Come up with the topic guidelines, make sure that they are on point, make sure that they're in a lot of timeline that the professor has deemed, make sure that it's fluent, that it's cohesive, and essentially helping them develop a good fundamental outline and then building out from there. So in my experience, a lot of that is the same with writing papers, putting together research reports. You sort of have to start out with that skeleton draft, and then it kind of evolves from there. So I do think that there is some synergy between the two. I do think a good speech coach and a good writing coach can certainly help. And I can tell you from my experience with Kane, depending on the overflow, there are times when we do help each other out.
Now, is there a tutor training or orientation program in place at Kane?
Yes, there is. Unfortunately, I have not gone through it simply because I have started many, many years ago. And of course, I have many years of professional, business experience under my belt. But I do believe that when they bring on new tutors, they put them, whether it's writing or speech, that they go through sort of an orientation process and a little training on not only how to use the systems, but also, what to expect. I can tell you that recently the department director has had all of us, especially during COVID, because we sometimes have a little bit more time on our hands, there's not that much of an influx of students coming in, put together several materials that other tutors can use, on how to ace your interview, how to develop public speaking presentation skills, and so on. So we have those materials ready, and we certainly share them so that we can all use them, when appropriate.
So how do you get faculty buy-in? We obviously want to get the word out about the services that this lab offers, and I'm sure a great vehicle to do that is by talking to faculty members. So how do you get them to buy in and share in the enthusiasm for this facility?
Well, when I first started, it was really going almost door to door, obviously starting via email. From a proximity perspective, the lab was right outside the communication department on the fourth floor of the CAS building, where a lot of the adjuncts were teaching their communication courses. So it was simply as they're walking past the center, or I'm going out to certain classrooms and sort of tapping on their door and going in and introducing myself, and other speech coaches would introduce themselves to to the classroom and answer any questions and sort of get the word of mouth going from that perspective. However, today I think it's a little bit more unified. The university is doing emails, the department directors reaching out to faculty. So we're not really doing, meaning the instructors are not doing much of their advertising. It's more coming from the university department, from the learning center department heads. But it's a combination of things, I still think, today. And of course, we haven't been on campus in a while, so you can't necessarily just go over and knock on a door of a faculty member and ask if you can come visit their class. However, we have been doing some introductions online via Zoom and Blackboard, and that seems to be going well. But I think that most professors are enthusiastic about it because, remember, the Learning Center is not for everybody, right? It's for people who, A, need it, and then B, people who want it, right? So there are students that feel that they need that extra help. There are students that just want to take advantage of the help because they know that it's there. Our goal, my goal at least, is to try to get them to come in, because I think once we can identify a challenge and show them how easy it is to overcome, I see this little spark or a light bulb go off and they kind of get hooked, and then they tell their friends, and ultimately we help improve their grades. So the enthusiasm comes from both the students and the professors. We do work hand in hand with professors. If we see a challenge with a student, we might reach out to them via email and say, hey, can I have a chat? What can I do to help? So I do think we work hand in hand, and I think that promotes enthusiasm within itself. And, I think the students and the professors themselves certainly enjoy, what help or assistance that we try to do.
Now, I know that your unit is titled the Public Speaking Lab, but are there any other services that your lab offers to students?
Most of the students that come to us are for public speaking, but we do get students from math classes and science classes, and we do remediation for education students and things like that. So it is a little bit more involved. It doesn't have to just be, hey, I have to put together a speech. Can you help me wing it? And then quite honestly, I know each university has their own career center, but in addition to that, public speaking and presentation, especially the elevator pitch, is so important for interviewing. So, the speech lab can certainly help students with on-campus or preparing for post-graduation interviews with actual real companies. Really extends out. I always like to make a joke. If you're running for class president, or if you want to be the head of your local community's PTA, we're happy to, have a chat and see how we can help you out.
Well, it's good to hear. So my last question for you, and this one is probably going to take a little bit of time to sort of unpack, but let's start from scratch. So for those listening to this who maybe their campus does not have a public speaking lab and they're interested in putting one together, what would your advice be to them, or what would the course of action be that you'd recommend for them?
Oh, great question. Well, like anything, I believe, you have to start small, right? You don't want to go out and try to do too much at once. So I can tell you from my experience, starting small was just having a very small conference room adjacent to the communication department that we had sleeved out just for public speaking tutoring. And at that time, we literally had a sign-in sheet. We weren't even using, automated, features for sign-in and log on. Today we use a bevy of tools, including Tutor track and email and other things. So, start out small, maybe have one or two grad assistants or people that want to be involved. I do know, or I believe rather, that grad assistants are always looking for things to do, and many of them are very good at putting this together. You'd be surprised how creative, some of the grad students can be, and they could help develop, the curriculum and develop some of the outreach mechanisms that they think would connect with the campus, because most of them are on campus actually being students themselves. So, and then, you start to get word of mouth. Maybe have a couple days a week that you're open, or one day a week that you're open, and let it evolve naturally. If you find most students only want to come at night, post hours in the evening. If you find, most students only want to come on Saturday, you kind of be adaptable to what is best for the people who need the help, and just let it evolve from that perspective. And then as it grows, then you can make a decision on whether you need to do more, and that becomes an entirely different situation altogether.
Well, that pretty much wraps up our conversation tonight. Ray, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us, and thank you for all the work that you do in the Public Speaking Lab, helping our students develop confidence as well as skills that they can use in college and beyond. And, of course, thank you all for listening to the Public Speaking Educators Forum. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and Audible.com. Follow us on Twitter at PSEF Podcast, and be sure to tune in again soon.